Decriminalization in Harris County. While many states have loosened restrictions regarding marijuana, with approval from the Department of Justice, Texas, however, pursues an Nixonian onslaught with Harris County leading the campaign, despite a Texas law that allows counties to ignore incidences of marijuana possession. Through a lack of consideration from policymakers and the Harris County Sheriff's Department, current possession law under the Texas Controlled Substance Act of 1973 disproportionately affects racial minorities and those of lower economic stratum in Harris County. Every year in Harris County, roughly 12,000 residents face charges for the possession of marijuana, with race and economic standing being the largest factors of arrest probability and magnitude of consequences. Harris County's war on marijuana requires unethical searches and seizures, which often result from racial stereotypes. As well, the war necessitates a perpetual enemy, nonviolent offenders whose only crime proposes far less harm to their person than the legal alternatives, benzodiazepines, alcohol, synthetic cannabinoids, and/or tobacco. Currently, 55% of the nation has admitted to consuming marijuana, along with 65% of Texans whom advocate for complete legalization. This statistic merely contributes additional speculation to Harris County's ability to incarcerate marijuana offenders for up to 180 days in jail. These harsh penalties, coupled by the numerous potential violators, lead to excessive costs, with taxpayers ultimately responsible. However, a simple solution exists. Harris County could decriminalize marijuana similarly to Travis County, who enacted policy making low-level possession a civil citation. Ultimately, the decriminalization of marijuana would yield economic growth for both the public and private sectors, relieve the inflictions produced by enforcement tactics, while also amending an unjustified criminal scheduling. The decriminalization of marijuana in Harris County would substantially increase the county's budget, thus inevitably benefiting the public sector and indirectly the private sector. The multilateral enforcement of current possession laws requires a substantial amount of appropriated revenue. To understand the formation of these costs, one must consider the two factors catalyzing these expenditures: the number of arrests that occur annually within the county and the resources involved in the facilitation and processing of an arrest. According to the FBI Uniform Crime Reporting Program, Harris County arrests on average 11,836 people for marijuana possession each year. These numbers place Harris County in fifth for the highest number of marijuana possession arrests in the country. Since 2007, Harris County managed to arrest more individuals for marijuana possession than New York County, despite the fact that their police force operates with the capacity to stop and frisk, and that their population remains 4 times larger. Harris County's high number of arrests correlates with a substantial budgetary appropriation for criminal justice activities. In 2002, Harris County spent $483 million on criminal justice, while only spending $307 million on all their expenditures combined. Harris County furthered this discrepancy throughout the past decade after each budgetary resolution. In 2012, $832 million was delegated for the allocation of criminal justice ventures, while $363 million was allocated for the funding of all other resources combined. When calculating for inflation, total budgetary expenditures swelled by $187 million, while non-criminal justice revenue dwindled in the amount of $28.8 million. A per capita analysis magnifies the variance, illustrating that non-criminal justice revenue capitulated a proportional devaluation of 23% throughout the same time period. Although funding with the intention to thwart criminal activity flourished exponentially at the expense of other county programs, the county experienced no impact on crime. In fact, a negative correlation prevailed, according to the Texas Department of Public Safety crime reports. However, a unique effect did occur. In the wake of increased expenditures, drug possession arrests skyrocketed. Due to the stagnation of trends depicting drug use amongst county residents, the heightened budget indicates undeniable responsibility for causation. Thus, the only tangible culmination resultant of the bloated budget is an intensified number of drug arrests for many nonviolent offenders. In 2012, 25,267 total arrests transpired, therefore indicating that 47% of arrests were for the possession of marijuana, thereby substantiating a clear correlation between drug possession arrests and spending, evident on behalf of the county's perpetually inflating appropriations for criminal justice escapades. The cost of trial, jail, evidence analysis, booking, and etc. incur critical liabilities on behalf of the taxpayers. Since marijuana specifically comprises a momentous portion of total county arrests, its decriminalization would salvage millions of dollars. Harvard economist Jeffrey Myron verifies this in his report, The Budgetary Implications of Marijuana Prohibition, which prompted over 500 economists, including 3 Nobel laureates such as Milton Friedman, to advocate for marijuana's legalization. According to Myron's model, Harris County approximately spends $389 million on the prohibition of marijuana, therefore indicating that Harris County spends more money on the enforcement of marijuana than it spends on all other non-criminal justice-related resources. Yet, if Harris County were to enact policy similar to Travis County, additional revenue would accrue through an attached civil fee levied for possession. Independent from citation revenues, the non-criminal justice budget would increase by roughly 33%. Or conversely, the citizens of Harris County's tax liability would decrease by the same percentage. Regardless, the elimination of marijuana prohibition would yield substantial gains for the county's private sector. According to Keynesian economics, an increase in government expenditures outside the realm of criminal justice, facilitated by decriminalization, would ultimately boon gross domestic product exponentially, when accounting for spending multipliers. Conversely, members of the Federal Reserve Board and Dartmouth's economics department ascertained that decreasing tax liabilities result in similar exponential economic boon. Therefore, the increased funding attributed to decriminalization would result in private sector growth, regardless of the county's method for implementation. Excluding evident economic incentives, marijuana's current legal status remains unjustified. John Locke's theory of the social contract contends that citizens relinquish rights in order to exist within the confines of a governmental framework. The social contract hinges on reasonable restraints necessary for the maintenance of the common good. Thus, if unjust laws prevail, liberty of the individual diminishes. There are many notions regarding marijuana's harm profile, yet they are gravely overstated. First, being marijuana's addictive potential. The National Institute on Drug Abuse studied the relative addictiveness of 6 separate drugs: cannabis, caffeine, cocaine, alcohol, heroin, and nicotine. NIDA's results illustrated that of the 6, marijuana ranked least addictive in all tested characteristics of addiction. Since nicotine, alcohol, and caffeine remain legal for sale in U.S. markets, addictiveness alone cannot warrant illegality when the banned substance induces a lower level of addiction. The next notion often attributed to marijuana consumption is the potential for brain damage. Brain damage lacks similar insignificance as a means of justifying illegality due to current legal status of alcohol, which inflicts quantifiable neurological damage, such as the complete destruction of neurons and neuron pathways, while blunting the potentiality of neurogenesis. Conversely, marijuana and its primary psychoactive compound, THC, induce neither measurable long-term cognitive impairments nor neurological deficits. According to John Morgan, MD Medical Professor Emeritus at New York University Medical School, none of the medical tests currently used to detect brain damage in humans have found harm from marijuana, even from long-term, high-dose use. The claim that marijuana destroys brain cells is based on a speculative report dating back a quarter of a century that has never been supported by any scientific study. Similarly, the University of California San Diego School of Medicine determined no measurable damage to neurological functioning occurred due to marijuana consumption. Their conclusion derived from aggregating 15 prior studies and comparing 704 long-term recreational users to a control of 484 users. In fact, studies related to marijuana cause researchers to believe that neuroprotective qualities and even the stimulation of neurogenesis occur as a result of consumption, suggesting that marijuana could prevent brain damage from other factors while also stimulating the growth of new neurons. Marijuana prohibition exhibits multiple unintended consequences onto many within the Houston area directly. Therefore, decriminalization would relieve much of the collateral damage. According to the ACLU report, Marijuana Laws in Black and White, racial stereotyping is indicative of drug possession cases and enforcement. Drug crimes differ from most other crimes in a distinct way. As opposed to responding to a report, such as in the case of theft or murder, where the police receive information of a crime occurring, then proceed with the investigation process, police actively seek for drug possessors. Drug possession crimes require the uncovering of possession through searches which often have no probable cause. Police utilize their discretion for when and whom to search. It is this discretion that inadvertently formulates a divergence in enforcement across multiple racial groups. The propensity to stereotype affects the frequency of random searches, thereby indirectly increasing the number of possession charges for African Americans and other individuals victimized by stereotyping. Data from the Houston Police Department that indicates the prevalence of racial profiling shows that policing strategies more likely to result in low-level drug arrests are used more frequently on black motorists. As well, black motorists are 4 times more likely to be subjected to vehicle searches than white motorists without probable cause. The ACLU, in its report, The War on Marijuana in Black and White, ranked Harris County as the 5th racist county with regard to marijuana possession arrests. Based on the ACLU's findings, African Americans are roughly 2.5 times more likely to be arrested than whites when adjusted for the county's demographics. While blacks made up about 19% of Harris County's residents, they made up almost 50% of those arrested for felony drug possession between October 2011 and September 2012, and they comprise 65.8% of those being incarcerated by Harris County in state prisons or jails for felony drug possession.